One of my favourite things to do is to go to the beach. But if I want to learn about the beach and all the things that are there, often I pop into the Marine Discovery Centre at Henley Beach and talk to my friend Georgie. Georgie is what we call a marine biologist, yes?
Yes.
And we're going to go for a walk and see some of the cool stuff here. So let's do it! One of the great things about the Marine Discovery Centre, of course, is you come in here and you see these aquariums full of these amazing fish. So, Georgie, what have we got in this tank here? What are we looking at?
So the guy at the front is a beautiful big porcupine fish, a type of pufferfish found here in South Australia. And the other two who tend to swim towards the bottom of the tank are our southern fiddler ray, who we're about to see coming up onto the sand, and of course our beautiful Port Jackson shark. So these are a small shark species found around southern Australia in temperate waters, which a lot of our animals here are found in.
And so why do we find, when we look in this aquarium, why do they tend to swim along the bottom?
So animals in the ocean will find their own sort of niche, so their own place in the marine environment. Some animals will swim towards the top, some towards the middle, and others like the ray and the shark here are bottom feeders. So they find their food and their homes on the bottoms of the ocean, and that's just their place in the ecosystem.
Of course, so it's about, you're right, it's about finding where shall we live, we'll live there. We adapt to the food and the conditions.
Absolutely. Their mouths are both right on the bottom of their heads, so that they're looking for things that are living in the sand.
Fantastic. And right over here, we've got... what have we got? Oh, seahorses. We'll come back to those a little bit later. Okay, so we're just coming over here. So, Georgie, fish measuring station. What is a fish measuring station, and why are we measuring fish?
So these fish measuring stations are found all over South Australia, usually on jetties or near boat ramps. And it shows us the different kinds of fish we can catch in South Australia, as well as telling us about their minimum size limits and their bag limits.
Right, and those things are important, aren't they, if we're wanting to make sure that we have sustainable, replenished populations of fish?
Absolutely.
Okay, so have you got an example of a fish?
Absolutely. So I've just got here a flathead. So we look for the kind of fish that we've caught, so you can use the pictures on here to find our flathead. It will tell you the minimum size as well as how many you can take home. So the minimum size of a fish will tell us how long it takes for the fish to mature and for those fish to then have their own eggs and babies and replenish the population. So our flathead has to be 30 centimetres. This one is 33 centimetres, so this one is large enough to take home. If it was any smaller, we'd have to throw it back into the ocean.
One of the cool things about this place is all of the stuff that you find around. And right here, we saw the Port Jackson shark earlier, but here's is this one in here, is this like full size?
This is about an average size. This is about 1 metre long. They can get up to 1.5 metres, but on average they'll reach about this size, about 1 metre long.
Now, paleontologists like me, we are obsessed with teeth and jaws, and these are the jaws of a Port Jackson shark. And we were talking before about the adaptations that different fish have to the diet that they eat and where they live, whether they're bottom feeders and stuff. So what does this tell us about what a Port Jackson shark would eat?
So the Port Jackson shark jaw that you can see here has some really sharp grabbing teeth towards the front, and then big, flat, strong teeth at the back. So this can tell us that they eat a lot of animals with shells. They'll use their front grabbing sharp teeth to grab the shell, and then the flat teeth at the back to crush up their prey and then eat whatever's inside. So that might be sea urchins, sea snails and cockles.
Now, I notice you're also holding some other teeth there. What have you got there?
So we like to compare different sorts of animals. So these teeth are from a smaller sort of reef shark. So these sharks will actually have lots of rows of teeth that follow back into their mouths and in their jaws. So this is because these guys, instead of being bottom feeders, will hunt for their prey. So finding fish, thrashing around, they can often lose their teeth. So they've got teeth in the back of their jaws there to replace them.
So like humans who have baby teeth and grown-up teeth, they have baby teeth, grown-up teeth, grown-up teeth Mark 2, grown-up teeth Mark 3, and keep on doing it. We find that with lots of sharks, don't we?
Yes, absolutely. So the great white shark is thought to, over its lifetime, can lose up to about 30,000 teeth and keep replacing those. So it's basically got an infinite amount of teeth backed up in its jaw.
As many teeth as it needs for as long as it lives.
Yes, absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, what else have we got here? So here in this room in the center, we find rubbish, we find marine debris. And there's a whole lot of jars of things here. Georgie, so what have we got?
So these are all different kinds of litter that we've sorted into different categories. All of this litter was found here on Henley Beach, right near the centre. So at Henley Beach we get a lot of cutlery and straws from people eating out near the cafes, as well as lots of sea glass and cigarette butts as well.
And we find on some beaches different kinds of litter, but we also find obviously far too much litter on all of the beaches.
Yeah, so none of this obviously belongs in the marine environment, so it can then go on to harm wildlife or be ingested and eaten by different animals and harm them in that way.
And of course it can last for a while, can't it?
Absolutely.
Now right here on the floor is some litter, some rubbish, and what we have next to it, Georgie, there's a whole series of years. Now what's going on here?
So this is what we call our litter decomposition timeline. So we like to talk to our visitors about how long it actually takes for some of this rubbish that we do find on the beach, how long it takes for it to break down if we were to pick it up.
Right, so we go from 6 weeks at one end, and down here we got 600 years. 1 million years.
Yeah, basically forever.
So there are some things that are thrown into the ocean by us humans that it takes 1 million years to break down. So grab something. What, like that apple? How long's that apple going to take?
So
where would we put that? Where do you think, folks?
So somewhere up here, somewhere down here. The apple is an organic material, something a natural food.
So the apple's probably going to be closer to the 6 weeks or the 2 months.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, a couple of months. Okay. Something like maybe that plastic bag, because we often know that plastic bags are dangerous for all kinds of reasons, because animals look at them and think that they're jellyfish. And if they eat jellyfish, then they may eat a bag like that. So how long will that take to decompose?
So plastic obviously is a really big problem in the ocean. This kind of plastic is quite thin, so if it's exposed to sunlight, it will only take 10 to 20 years to decompose. However, if this was to sink to the bottom of the ocean and not be exposed to sunlight, that could then last thousands of years.
And we do have examples in the oceans, don't we, of large amounts of plastic deep beneath the sea. And I suppose the other thing is that in decomposing, it's becoming tiny little pieces of microplastic. And they themselves are dangerous too. Yeah. Okay, one more. What's the oldest? What's the thing out of this that's going to take? Oh, there's fishing line.
So
how long is fishing line going to take?
Really strong materials. So when we're doing our litter decomposition timeline, we try to think of the materials that are built to be really strong. This plastic fishing line, which obviously does end up in the ocean, goes all the way down here, ends up at 600 years that it will last floating around in our oceans. 600
years, and the potential to do damage across all of that 600 years.
So the fishing line will get tangled around to lots of animals, flippers or fins, and then can harm them in that way.
Right. Okay. So, and what else have you got? So you've got a glass jar.
Our glass jar is actually our item that will last 1 million years, or basically forever. So it could smash up into smaller pieces, but the parts of the glass that make up that jar will go on to basically last forever.
So there you have it, folks. You have a timeline of all of the things, and here's a completed timeline that we prepared earlier of all of the things that you can see from 2 months, 3 months, 10 to 20 years, 50 years, all the way up to 1 million years. And as Georgie, you say, effectively, that's kind of almost like forever for the animal species.
Yeah, so with the glass especially, it's really important that we try to recycle our glass. So because it is built to be a strong material, we can recycle it indefinitely. So really good and important lesson to learn from all this is what we can recycle and reuse.
And these are pretty easy things we can do at home, can't we?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because we've got bins that there's recycling, there's landfill, there's organics.
Yeah, so we can separate out our waste.
We've just been looking at things that you can do from home through separating your rubbish into recycling and organics and stuff. But something else you can do at home. What's going on here, Georgie?
So in this model we show 2 different kinds of shower heads and also explain the importance of water, so conserving our water use. make sure we're not using too much water at home. So our two different shower heads is we've got up here. It will actually use really different amounts of water if we were to have a 5-minute shower.
That's amazing, isn't it? Just by having a completely different shower head, you change from using 20 litres per minute to 9 meters per minute. You know, Georgie, one of my favourite things that I did as a kid, and sometimes I still do now, is go along the beach and have a bit of a look and see what things they are. And we kind of call it beachcombing, don't we? We're going to the beach looking at things. What are some of the things that we can find here? I mean, what have we got here?
So we've got lots of different specimens from South Australia. So one of our favourites is the Port Jackson shark egg, which you can find washed up on rocky reef beaches. Right,
because of course the Port Jackson shark is one of the ones we saw swimming before. We saw its teeth and the kinds of things that it ate, and these are their eggs. Now, how long is a baby inside that egg for?
So the baby shark grows inside these spiral-shaped eggs for up to a year, so between 9 and 12 months, until it will hatch out and grow up all on its own without its mother or father.
That's amazing, isn't it? And what else have we got? Something else that we've got here. So these things here. These are air sacs. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So these you can find washed up on the beach. They're actually the swim bladders from porcupine fish, just like the one we saw in our aquarium earlier.
Right, and so what's the point of having that as a fish? Why would you have that?
So the swim bladders actually help the fish to stay buoyant in the water without having to use energy swimming upwards or downwards. They can put gas in and out of their swim bladders to basically keep their buoyancy in the water.
Fantastic. One of the really cool things to do, of course, is to use microscopes to have a closer look at some of the things we might find on the beach. So, what have we got here, Georgie? What can we look at?
Sand. So sand is actually made up of tiny crystals of silica and can also be made up of crushed up shells and parts of animals from the ocean.
And it's amazing, isn't it? When you just look at that tiny little bits of sand, it looks like when they're magnified, they look like they're fully formed rocks, because of course they are, but they're just tiny.
Tiny little rocks, yeah.
Now, what do we have here, Georgia? It looks to me like we have a number of different kinds of, I guess you'd describe them as habitats that we find in the ocean and by the sea, yes?
Yeah, so in the ocean, a lot of people think of the ocean as one kind of habitat, whereas we actually do have heaps of different kinds of unique habitats, and in each of those we'll find different animals and plants.
Which is similar to what we were talking about at the very beginning, isn't it? With the fish that live at the bottom of the sea and the fish that don't. So intertidal, what's it intertidal? What does that mean?
So basically that's an area, so maybe some rock pools that you might have explored in, a place that will get covered in water at high tide, but is left completely dry at low tide. So these animals have to have lots of adaptations to survive in these extreme environments.
Right, so it's this constant change that they're having to deal with. Okay, when we get to sandy shores, is that a bit more constant?
Yeah, a bit more constant. There's a lot less habitat in terms of the physical habitat around, so less rocks and plants, a lot of just bare sand. So these are the sorts of habitats you'd mainly find cockles and sand snails under the wet sand, as well as some sand crabs.
And then we come to some rocky shores. And these three that we're looking at, we find in and around South Australia, where we are here at the Marine Discovery Centre?
Yeah, that's right. So further down south of metropolitan Adelaide, we get a lot of rocky shores. And these are the sorts of places where, just like we saw before, we find our Port Jackson shark egg cases washed up.
Fantastic. Of course, one of the things to remember is that when we're talking about the oceans and the seas, is that it's not just fish. There are all kinds of animals, including whales. And whales, some of the biggest animals that have ever lived are mammals that live in the sea. And we right here, this is part of the backbone. Now, my hand is quite a distance away from that. So what I'm going to get Georgie to do is to put her hand nice and close with the Port Jackson shark egg, and you can see like this. Just imagine, just put your hand in your back, feel your back, you feel those little backbones that you've got, and this is just one backbone. And the other bones that we've got here, we've got some ribs, right?
Yes, we've got some whale rib bones here.
And do we know what kind of whales these are from?
I believe these are from pygmy right whales.
Pygmy. Now, pygmy means small, doesn't it? So these are small right whales. These are not a blue whale. So a blue whale, which we don't get in the Gulf, they're much further away from here. But down at places like Victor Harbour, we get right whales. And so they're significantly bigger than these. So huge animals that live in the sea, but that informs us, I suppose, about the extraordinary diversity. Well, I said we'd come back here, didn't I? And here we are. We're just about running out of time, but I wanted to see, what do we call these? Seahorses? Is that it? Is that their proper, or do they have another name?
These particular kinds of seahorses are big-bellied seahorses. So they're a kind of fish, but a very, very strange-looking kind of fish.
Right, and we find these off the in South Australian waters?
Yeah, that's right. So they're the biggest seahorses we get in southern Australia, growing up to sometimes 25 centimetres, but here in the colder waters of South Australia.
Right, and with seahorses, is it the boys that look after the eggs?
Yeah, that's right. So some of our seahorses, like this one at the front, has a bit of a yellow belly. So these are the pouches in which the males or the fathers will carry the eggs in their pouch for up to a couple of months until the eggs are ready to hatch.
Wow, and when they're born, the little sea dragons, or seahorses, sea dragons, they then, are they looked after by the grown-ups, or do they go off and they're big enough to they're fully formed but tiny?
Yeah, that's right. So once they're actually hatched out of the egg and then born out of the pouches, they're basically like miniature seahorses, and they're just like the sharks, out on their own to grow up without the care of mum or dad.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Joe. We're going to keep looking at these seahorses for a moment. But the other thing, of course, is there are so many cool interactive things here that you can find and see here at the Marine Discovery Centre. And we just wanted to show you some of the things. But the best thing to do is to if you're in Adelaide, is to pop in and have a look, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Come and give us a visit. We can even take you down on a marine trail in Henley Beach and show you some of the cool stuff we find.
Because that's right, because you are actually right next to the beach, and here's a bit of a scene of the beach where I was walking a little bit earlier, but you're right on the beach, so you come to here inside the centre, you learn a bit about the animals, and then you go out to the sea and have a bit of a look at the place where they actually live.
Yeah, absolutely, and we just like to form that connection with the beach so that we can then do our best to look after it and love it some more.
Fantastic. Cheerio.